Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome to today's edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show podcast.
Third hour of Clay and Buck starts right now, everybody. Thanks for rolling with us. As we said, the big news for today in the world of politics. Well, actually, there's a few things of big news. Nancy Pelosi is not running for leadership anymore, so this is a major shift on the Democrat side of things. The GOP has won the House officially, so those things are very much tied in together. And so one I think worthwhile point of discussion here would be what's going to happen now that you have a Republican Congress, Republican House of Representatives, I should say. And the reality is that you're going to have, one, the blunting of the Biden agenda, which is a good thing. There'll be less harm able to be done to the country from the radical left under the guise of good old Joe Biden, who you can trust. You know, he's just Joe, the blue-collar guy taking the choo-choo to work in D.C. and all that stuff. All the false stories told about how Joe Biden is going to unite the country and all that stuff so that we could have far-left Democrat policy, AOC policy with a Joe Biden grin. That's going to be a whole lot harder now. But there are some early signs here that we'll get into the investigations in a second because I got to start talking to Clay about Hunter Biden, another topic of cover. We're talking about the Trump investigation before. And I'll just say this now. People ask me about the Durham report. The Democrats win. You know why? If you delay an investigation this long, doesn't matter. People just forget. People right now, wait, it probably, for a lot of folks, this is not a criticism. For a lot of people, say, wait, the Durham report. Oh, yeah, that's right. The Russia collusion investigation of the origins, etc. Yeah, it's not going anywhere. A lot of talk about it, but it didn't go anywhere. And even when they eventually release some kind of a statement, it's not really going to mean very much. But we'll get to the Hunter Biden investigation in a second. Here's what we got. First of all, Mitch McConnell, and this is frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating that you've got the same leadership on the Republican side after a disastrous, I mean, there's no accountability for the disastrous strategy. The voters turned out, Republican voters turned out all over the place, but not in the numbers needed in the places they were needed, right? I mean, running up the scoreboard for Republicans in some of these states doesn't really, whether Governor Abbott wins by 8 points or 12 points doesn't really mean all that much. But when you're down a few thousand, I think right now the state attorney general in Arizona race, which might have even been called, but it's hundreds of votes. Someone told me this last night. I think it's still, they're counting and there's a little bit going on, but it's down to literally hundreds of votes. So, Clay, we're hearing, though, from leadership already. I mean, here's Mitch McConnell, who is going to be Senate Minority Leader, saying, oh, yeah, there's going to be stuff we can agree on. Play 15.
My message to the administration, and you saw some of it this year, let's find some things between the 40-yard lines that we can agree on and do them. And we did some of that this year. Infrastructure, CHIPS, school safety, mental health. We need to make some progress for the American people, but it's going to have to be in the political center. If the House becomes Republican, there's no more one party running over us like they did through reconciliation.
Now, Clay, here's the thing. I do believe this is it is paradoxical. It's a tough thing to swallow in some ways. The fact that the Democrats will be able to do less damage through Congress and the federal government, that is a good thing. However, a divided Congress with a Biden administration that if Mitch McConnell gets his way here and they do things that are between the 40-yard lines, as he says, that seem like they're okay, it's, we're getting some stuff done, Biden will use this or whoever. I mean, if somebody still thinks maybe Biden doesn't, it doesn't matter. Whoever the Democrat presidential nominee will be, I believe it will be Biden for re-election. they'll use it, Clay. It'll actually help the Democrats, is what I'm saying. This is the challenge it's better for the country, but it's also better for Democrats in my mind in 2024.
Well, I think there are just so many interesting impacts as we analyze what's going to come going forward. And you and I are going to be on the front lines of we need to do an aggressive rebuild in terms of looking where we lost. Look at Arizona, look at Pennsylvania, look at Nevada, figure out what Democrats did well. Because I think it's fair to say that 2024, it's not like things are going to flip and suddenly inflation's going to not be an issue at all and the economy's going to be roaring and everything's going to be perfect. I think, and I bet you agree, Buck, that at 2023, at some point, even Democrats are going to have to acknowledge that we are in a recession. How long and how deep that recession will be, we may be in a recession already, right? The way that economists define it and the way that they study it. But I find it unlikely that suddenly things are going to be massively better for Democrats. So Republicans have to tell the story of what they will do different and also figure out how to go out and turn the election into a month-long affair. And this is going to be difficult for some people because I'm one of them. I love going to vote on Election Day. There's a certain majesty to it. It feels right. I take one of my kids and they get to go in the booth and see how it works. But we've got to understand that Democrats have perfected, to a large extent because of COVID, a new method of voting that allows them to vote for a month, and they are targeting voters to such an extent that they are finding low propensity voters, people who would never have gone and actually stood in line and voted, but they can target them and say, hey, did you know this about abortion? Hey, did you know this about the 2020 election deniers? They get them to fill out that ballot, they harvest it, they bring it in, they get them to put it in the mail, and it's having a very real impact. And if we don't copy that, if we do not put ourselves where, look, there's another sports analogy for you, Buck. Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time. He made his living as a defensive coach. And then college football turned into an offensive sport. And Nick Saban said, look, I can be a defensive coach and I can go 8-4 or 9-3. But if I want to win championships, I've got to take the tactics that are being used against them and against me and make them my own. If Republicans want to win, they've got to take the tactics that Democrats are using to get the vote out and make them their own. And that's going to make some people uncomfortable in this audience. I get it, because you may have voted a certain way, and you're saying, well, if it worked for Ronald Reagan in 1984, then it's good enough for us in 2024. I'm here to tell you that ain't true. You got to adjust to the paradigm shifts, and the paradigms are changed. And the thing that they're doing such a good job of, Buck, is they know who voted. They know who voted, and they don't have to target those people anymore. And we're suddenly pouring money in the last 3 weeks and riding on a wave and everything else. But people have already voted. People didn't even watch that Fetterman debate. We've got to take advantage of the new schematics, the new paradigm, get our vote out a month long, and we got to stop selling. We've talked about this. Stop selling the idea that your vote's not going to count. Doesn't work. Works against you for independents, and I think it tamps down Republican turnout because a lot of people say, I don't trust the results. I'm not going to go vote. It's a losing argument at this point in time.
There's also what the Congress in the GOP-controlled House will be able to do here on its own. There will be probably some fights. We all remember this, debt ceiling fights. That'll likely come up during the second half of 2023. That's likely to happen. Republicans are going to demand cuts. Democrats are going to want more spending. We can foresee where some of this is going. There'll be a focus on the Biden administration's withdrawal from Afghanistan. And, this is an area that I know about, not just from being a pundit, from having been in the CIA and working on the Afghanistan desk and being over there in Afghanistan. And I can tell you guys this, the issue with focusing on the withdrawal from Afghanistan is that ultimately the American people wanted us out of Afghanistan. And now the withdrawal was terrible. It was incompetent. It was a mess. But the memory of that, I know that members of Congress are going to say, oh, no, we have to remind the American people of the incompetence of this. The memory of that will fade while we're out of Afghanistan is eventually what the Democrats are just going to say. So I understand that they want to have this. I understand for a lot of people it's a question of what's right. more than what's effective necessarily in holding those hearings. But like I said, with the Benghazi hearings, there are some people that built big careers for cable news in those Benghazi hearings, but didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything. We can talk about it all day, but they got away with it. That's why Candy Crowley at CNN ran out and said, Obama did call it an act of terrorism, because they knew if Obama got reelected, nothing was going to happen. And this is the problem also. Even Senator Johnson brought this up in the hearings and any investigations that the House can do. Ultimately, it all comes down to whether the DOJ will act and whether the executive branch will go along with it, and it's in the hands of the Democrats. So nobody should feel like there's no overpromising that should be done here. Fauci is not getting frog marched out of anywhere, of his latest Vanity Fair interview in handcuffs. Like, that's not happening. They may have, he's like, look at how mean they are to me, these mean Republicans. Fauci's probably rolling around these days in a Maserati, flying private. It's been so hard for me during the pandemic. Look at me now. Sometimes my Gulfstream is 10 minutes late. So the reality is we're going to have some hearings into some things that will be worthwhile as information gathering for Republicans, and I think for some messaging. But when you don't control the executive branch, it's very hard to make it matter. The possible exception to this in all of these discussions, as you might have seen today, they're talking about Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and look, Joe Biden, they're not prosecuting Joe Biden. I can assure you of that. He's the president, and they're never going to do that. But even with 10% for the big guy. But Clay, you are a believer in the justice system, even when it comes to the son of the sitting president. I am not. But this will be a focus of the Republican majority Congress.
Last night, I had a stake bet win with our buddy Will Kane. We bet who would end up with more football wins, the University of Tennessee or the University of Texas, which was the real UT. My UT, the University of Tennessee, is going to have the better season. So Will and I had a stake bet. And while we were sitting there cutting into our stakes, fantastic stakes, and I think Council Oak was the name of it in the Seminole Hotel there, the Hard Rock Casino. As I'm cutting into that stake, I thought to myself, I still feel really good about this bet that we made, which is I really do think, obviously the time on it is going to be a challenge, but in terms of the argument, I still think they're going to charge Hunter Biden.
Wait, before the end of the year?
Well, I'm not sure about the end of the year. But in terms of the argument itself, I still think it's going to happen. And here's where I do think, and we'll play some of the audio from those hearings that were going on earlier today here in the next segment, Buck. And we'll also open up phone lines again, 800-282-2882. But I do wonder, how committed are Democrats going to stay to Joe Biden if some of these hearing details start to percolate and get more attention? And you've got a guy with dementia who's declining on a day-to-day basis. I do think there are going to be some body blows landed on Joe Biden, which weaken him as a candidate substantially as a result of the House flipping.
Did anyone care enough about Joe Biden's apparent or alleged dementia to change their vote, you think, in this election? It doesn't feel like it.
I think it's a good question. I think he's gotten progressively worse. And so one thing, we'll talk about this certainly in the months ahead. One thing will just be, Buck, how much worse does he get? Right? Because I feel like at this point, month to month, Biden is deteriorating before our eyes. And it's possible by the summer of 23 that he's going to be substantially worse right now than he is as we go into the winter of 22. And combine that with these hearings, there are going to be hits to Joe Biden's popularity that I think do register. Now, you can also point out, as we have, they just elected John Fetterman.
Yep.
If they can elect this dude in a toss-up state by 4.5 points, there possibly is the case that nothing matters about Joe Biden at all, that he is just a symbol of Democrat virtue signaling, and they are going to vote for him even if he's almost unable to even speak to the American public. But I got to tell you, our friends at Hillsdale College do so many good things for our republic. This is a college that lives up to the long-held mission of defending and explaining our nation's freedoms. One way they accomplish this by the creation of an online video series. Each series, a mini online college course They're well prepared with high production values and excellent conversations. They're free for you and me to watch on demand at a time that's good for any of us. Best watch series is called Constitution 101, which informs you of the greatness of the document. The newest series examines all the similarities found in governing our nation at our founding and today. It's amazing how many similarities there are in the topics that are debatable. New course is called The Real American Founding, a Conversation. Watch the trailer video and sign up for this new completely free online course at clayandbuckforhillsdale.com. That's clayandbuckforhillsdale.com.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
The Monica Crowley Podcast is a whip-smart, fast-paced, sassy blend of politics, culture, history, and humor, all brought to you with the sunny optimism of Ronald Reagan's happy warrior spirit. Hi, I'm Monica Crowley, and I've served 2 American presidents, Richard Nixon in his last years as Foreign Policy Assistant, and Donald Trump as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. You've seen me on TV, read my New York Times best-selling books and popular columns, and now you can download my podcast, where you will hear one-of-a-kind insights and interviews. So join me on the Monica Crowley Podcast. It's true appointment listening. Join our legion of happy warriors here on the Monica Crowley Podcast. Listen to the Monica Crowley Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show, rolling through the Thursday edition of the program. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We were talking earlier about what the impact may be from the House flipping officially to Republican control. Kevin McCarthy, now the Speaker. There was a press conference this morning discussing Joe Biden, his connections to Hunter Biden, and the nefarious activities that could be involved from both of those connections. And I wanted to play a couple of clips here from, this is Representative James Comer talking about an investigation of Joe Biden, not Hunter Biden. And let's listen first to cut 1.
This is an investigation of Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and why he lied to the American people about his knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes. National security interests require the committee conduct investigation, and we will pursue all avenues that have long been ignored. Committee Republicans have uncovered evidence of federal crimes committed by and to the benefit of members of the president's family. These include conspiracy or defrauding the United States, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering.
All significant, Buck, and I think it's important to note, I want to play cut 2 as well. This is not just about Hunter Biden's salacious activities, the drug use, the prostitution, all of the things that he documented that he did, which are against the law. But this is about 10% for the big guy. This is about Joe Biden running a criminal enterprise through his son, Hunter. Listen to James Comer, representative from Kentucky, continue with this press conference.
Hunter Biden isn't this innocent guy that just got a bad rap because he had a drug problem, and the Republicans don't need to waste any time on Hunter Biden. We're not trying to prove Hunter Biden is a bad actor. He is. If anybody wants to disagree with that, then there's nothing we have to talk about. Our investigation is about Joe Biden. And we already have evidence that would point that Joe Biden was involved with Hunter Biden on his deal. So we want the bank records And that's our focus. We're trying to stay focused on, was Joe Biden directly involved with Hunter Biden's business deals? And is he compromised? That's our investigation.
I just say this, man, you know, as much as I feel like you're not going to get, obviously, Joe Biden in any kind of legal trouble while he's the president and controls the DOJ, because Democrats take care of their own. I mean, within the system, they don't even have to work for Joe as appointees. The deep state will protect him. But we've also got to do what we can to, we say fight fire with fire when it comes to elections, Clay. It's got to be the same thing with control of the House, eventually the Senate. Got to keep them on their back foot as well, because that's what they're doing to us all the time. And I think that's important. Make them make the case that Hunter Biden's not super corrupt, or Joe Biden isn't super corrupt, because he is. One of the many items that's become so much more expensive this past year is ammunition. If you're a gun owner, I mean, I'm going shooting in a few days. I can tell you the price of ammo is sky high, which makes it all the more expensive to train and keep your skills sharp. There's a newer way to train, though, and keep those skills top-notch. You can train without ammunition at your home using something called a Mantis X system. The best shooters do the majority of their training by doing dry fire practice at home. That's what Mantis X is, a firearms training system that is a no-ammo, all-electronic way to improve your shooting accuracy. It simply attaches to your firearm like a weapon light. You can use it at home or the range for training instead of using expensive ammo. The Mantis X gives you data-driven, real-time feedback on your technique and guides you through drills and courses. 94% of shooters improve within 20 minutes of using the Mantis X. This is a product now being used by Marines and Army Special Forces. It's military-grade technology at an affordable price. It's a must-have for every gun owner. So start improving your shooting accuracy today. Go to MantisX.com. That's MantisX.com.
The one thing I know in Washington, they don't hand the gavels out in small, medium, and large size. It's one size gavel with the ability to subpoena and hold this government accountable, secure this border, fight to make us energy independent, give parents a say in their kids' education, and actually look what the DOJ is doing, what the DHS is doing, and others. And that's exactly what we're going to do. On day one, in this House, we will repeal 87,000 new IRS agents.
You would have the power to do that, wouldn't you, because you have the power of the purse?
That's exactly right, and we will use the power of the purse. The size of our debt has got to stop.
There you had Kevin McCarthy, who is telling everybody they're going to get rid of the 87,000 IRS agents that the Democrats put funding for. You would think that that would be something that everybody could agree is really terrifying, but nope. There are some folks who just believe that those 87,000 additional federal bureaucrats whose only job is to audit people are only going to audit the super rich people who have tons of money to pay lawyers and accountants to make sure that they don't even really have to deal with the audit, and it's never going to get anywhere really. So the whole thing was more than absurd. It was dishonest from the very beginning. So there are some things here that I think could be useful and meaningful, and the ability of the House of Representatives to at least expose more of what the Biden administration is doing. That has to continue on as well. There have to be mechanisms to use the platform that members of Congress have and their ability to get more answers and information. Clay, I mean, I think they've got to get aggressive, because what you see with Democrats is they subpoena people.
Yeah.
I mean, the Democrats act like when it came to Trump and January 6th and all this other stuff, they were effectively a, investigative arm and judiciary unto themselves. So we'll have to see if Republicans have the stomach for political battle here the way that their opponents have, because I mean, go talk to Steve Bannon about what Democrats are willing to do in Congress. They're willing to try to lock people up for not dancing to the required tune.
I think we also need people who are in the House that are uniquely skilled at being able to explain what's going on with the Joe Biden and the Hunter Biden story. Because what Democrats are going to say is, oh, we know that Hunter Biden's a troubled young man, even though he's over 50. He's just the son. He's not elected to any office. So what if he was using drugs or prostitutes and everything else? And I understand that's a salacious story, but I actually thought Miranda Devine in New York Post did an incredible job 2 years ago on this story. because what they focused in on was Joe Biden's complicity in Hunter Biden's business shenanigans. And that is the story. So I think, again, we played some audio for you in the last segment, bringing that home. You have to illustrate to the American public why Joe Biden's complicity there and its involvement with China and Ukraine and the millions, if not tens of millions of dollars that Hunter Biden got based on these illicit business relationships, why that directly keeps Joe Biden from being a reliable American president. And we have to go after the Democrats who were going to try to make that a complex story and make it succinct and understandable. Because you know as well as I do, Buck, and this is the trial lawyer explanation, you have to be good enough at making a huge swath of the public understand something that's complicated. You know, Watergate. Nobody really, the Whitewater, the investigation and the Clintons and land dealing and everything else. It was just way too complicated. People couldn't get their hands wrapped around exactly what was going on there. We got to simplify, right? We got to bullet point it and make it understandable exactly what Joe Biden was doing and why it matters. And this is what we were talking about earlier in the show, and I think it's going to be a storyline playing out for the next couple of months, Buck. How committed are Democrats going to be to defending Joe Biden? And or will there be some of these Democrats that want to push Joe Biden off the plank and find a way to keep him from running? Because Biden wants to run. Will there be any of this behind-the-scenes subterfuge from a Gavin Newsom, from a figure such as that, to try and cut the legs out from under Joe Biden using the House Republicans as an asset for him in order to make that happen? I'm not sure, but I am intrigued by it.
And let's remember that would we even be in this position? Would Joe Biden have been elected president if there wasn't the absolutely desperate and shameless effort to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story right before the election that involved not just the usual culprits in the Democrat-aligned corporate media, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, NPR, New York Times, Washington Post, and all the rest. No, it went beyond that to the 50 former intelligence professionals.
Oh, no doubt.
I'm a former intelligence professional. 50 former, which doesn't, now it's like I got to strike that from the resume because the whole brand here has been destroyed by these imbeciles. But Jim Jordan points out that there were spies who lied when it came to burying the Hunter Biden story. Play that clip, please.
What part of Mr. Comer's presentation was Russian disinformation? I mean, never forget what happened on October 19th, 2020, 15 days before the most important election we have in our country. Who's going to be the next president of the United States? 15 days before that, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Clapper, and 49 other people signed a letter that said the following. It is for these reasons that we write to say that the arrival on the U.S. political scene of emails purportedly belonging to Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. They further went on to say, we want to emphasize that we do not know if the emails provided to the New York Post are genuine or not, just that our experience makes us deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in this case. And of course, that letter became the pretext for suppressing this story, again, just days before the most important election we have in our country.
I mean, people who are supposed to be the most elite and credentialed in the field of spotting Russian disinformation, willingly lit their credibility, whatever it was, on fire in front of the whole country to make sure that there was no threat to Joe Biden's election. And Jim Jordan and other members of Congress can spend some more time looking into this because it's not just a rhetorical thing here. If there's big tech government collusion that occurred, which I'm quite firmly in the belief there was, that's something else. That starts to feel like rigging the election, Clay.
Might be even an example of our democracy being in peril. And I will point out, Buck, not only were there no consequences for those 51 officials involved in the intelligence community, they actually got rewarded. Many of them got promotions inside of the Biden administration. So not only did they lie, get caught in the lie, there have been actual rewards for the lie, which is even worse than if they had actually had to suffer some consequences. They've actually been rewarded by the Democrat Party for their lies and their willingness to spread falsehood.
I mean, I said it the other day on Fox News with our friend Will Cain hosting in for Tucker. I said that in the media landscape today, what we used to call the mainstream media, although I don't like that term very much, the corporate media landscape aligned with Democrats, liars get Pulitzers, truth tellers get fired. I mean, this is what actually occurs in these major institutions on a regular basis. And one of the best examples of this would be, look at everybody who were the most ardent Russia collusion, Trump-Russia collusion truthers. I mean, the people that were just absolutely fired up on that story day in and day out. Not only did they build audiences, become more famous, etc. from that, they got promotions largely within their media organizations because the game was not telling the truth. It was destroying Trump. And everybody knows it. Everyone at the New York Times, ever the Washington Post, they all know this. And now we all know this, too. I mean, the general public has caught on to the game.
And, Buck, not only did they lie, to your point, we can trace direct financial payment. Rachel Maddow is probably the biggest liar associated with Russia collusion at MSNBC when you consider her scope, the amount of shows she's had and the amount of time she's spent on it. She makes $30 million a year, Buck, only host a show one night a week now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, you would think if there were any consequences for being wrong, but it's not about right or wrong. It's about power and making sure that leftists have it. That's all they care about. My friends, unborn babies make a single sound. It's their heartbeat. It's best detectable with a device, an ultrasound machine. No one organization relies on that ultrasound technology more than the preborn pregnancy clinics. This is a nationwide nonprofit organization that uses ultrasound technology to introduce expectant moms to their unborn babies. Those moms are most often in crisis. They're making a difficult decision between giving a child life and an abortion. The team at preborn pregnancy clinics offers support and care and understanding through that decision process and after, if the mother chooses life. But once that mother sees and hears her child through the ultrasound machine, the decision is for life most of the time. Preborn has saved hundreds of thousands of babies this way. Our goal is to help them rescue 40,000 more babies this year, and they rely on the donations of people like you and me, the pro-life community. One ultrasound is just $28, and now through a match, your gift is doubled. Any gift will help, and all donations are tax deductible. If you have the means, would you consider a leadership gift? $7,500 will be matched dollar for dollar. That's enough to place an ultrasound machine in a needy center, saving countless babies' lives. Think about this, a leadership gift. If you have it, and there's somebody out there right now who has $7,500, it's tax deductible. $7,500, that will be matched dollar for dollar to put a full ultrasound machine in one of these centers. Every day, that machine introducing a mother to a baby, one after the other, saving lives. Think about it if you can. I know there's somebody out there right now who can do this leadership gift. Use your cell phone, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby, or go to preborn.com/buck. That's preborn.com/BUCK. This message has been sponsored by Preborn.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interests. I enjoy talking with fascinating people across a variety of topics. On Newt's World, we've had some extraordinary guests join us, like former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
Ending the war in Vietnam was a necessity in order to help heal the divisions in the country.
John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup.
The world has been winning the war against hunger for 4 decades. In 2014, it switched. We have a serious hunger crisis.
And House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy.
What I've really found the Republican Party to be, it's the party of the people, the working people of America.
I release 3 episodes of Newt's World podcast every week, and I hope you'll find my conversations engaging and informative, and hopefully we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
The Monica Crowley Podcast is a whip-smart, fast-paced, sassy blend of politics, culture, history, and humor, all brought to you with the sunny optimism of Ronald Reagan's happy warrior spirit. Hi, I'm Monica Crowley, and I've served 2 American presidents, Richard Nixon in his last years as Foreign Policy Assistant, and Donald Trump as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. You've seen me on TV, read my New York Times best-selling books and popular columns, and now you can download my podcast, where you will hear one-of-a-kind insights and interviews. So join me on the Monica Crowley podcast. It's true appointment listening. Join our legion of happy warriors here on the Monica Crowley podcast. Listen to the Monica Crowley podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back in, closing out the show. I'm about to head back to the Patriot Awards going on Fox Nation tonight. A lot of Fox News people down here, including Buck Sexton's own fiance, helping to put on this fantastic event. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight, I think. And Buck, I was right when we were coming in today. I was getting asked, have you seen the craziness on this Taylor Swift concert tour? Like, she broke Ticketmaster. She sold millions of tickets. Nobody can get them. They're going for like $20,000
each. I was going to say, Clay, you're a very connected guy. I was going to be like, hey, for Carrie's birthday, how about some Taylor Swift tickets? But those things are tough to come by.
They're selling out in like 30 seconds all over stadiums. I don't even know how that works. And some people are legitimately paying now like $20,000. And I used to get made fun of for this, but I have argued for some time. And look, leave aside the politics, because Taylor Swift's a Tennessean like I'm a Tennessean, and she's weighed in on some of our statewide races and frankly just made herself look not very smart. But she's got a catalog of songs, and she's still only like 30 years old or whatever the heck she is. She might become the most wealthy musician in the history of music before all is said and done, because she writes and controls much of her catalog, and because her entire sort of fan base is people who are still, a lot of them, very young, and they're going to be watching her in concert like she's the Rolling Stones if she wants to do it till she's 60 or 70.
I'm always so curious about what your perception is on things like this. Of the female, almost half of our audience is female. It's probably, I think it's the estimates we get are usually like 45%. Yeah. I mean, so we've got almost half of the people listening to us are ladies. Thank you, ladies. What percentage of them do you think like Taylor Swift? Forget about, when I say like, that doesn't mean forget the politics. Listen to Taylor Swift. I bet it's pretty high. I think Taylor Swift is pretty crossover, right? We thinking 30% maybe?
Oh, I think at least, because it's not only, so younger you are, you 100% listen to Taylor Swift. So I would go so far as to say, if you are under 30 and you are a woman, there's almost 100% certainty that you listen to Taylor Swift on some level. You may not love her, you may not consider yourself to be a monster fan, but it's just impossible to have missed her as you were growing up. You listened to her somewhere along the way. And I think a lot of parents, because there's so many musicians out there that are, frankly, they behave in a way like early Taylor Swift was very PG, right? So if you were a mom and you had a 12 or 13-year-old daughter, you could take her to a Taylor Swift concert and it didn't feel like you were going to like a strip show, right? I mean, like in kind of a crazy way. Like, it was very wholesome, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it. So I think there are a lot of moms and maybe even grandmoms that have been to these Taylor Swift concerts with their daughters and granddaughters and consider themselves to be kind of fans a little bit too.
I mean, look.
Have you been to a Taylor Swift concert?
No, kind of out of here. But I was going to admit something. What? I ride an e-scooter, so I go to Taylor Swift concerts. Settle down, Clay.
Laura and I went to a Taylor Swift concert. I've been to one of them before.
Have?
Yeah, Laura and I, my wife. We went.
Well,
sat down close to the front. Yeah, I've been there.
So I'm trying to think what concert that I've been to. I mean, my mom took me to a Debbie Gibson concert.
Oh, that's big.
You remember Debbie Gibson?
Oh, yeah. I went to Paula Abdul back in the day. And do you remember Color Me Bad? Do you remember I do
vaguely remember the
Mia
group
Moore?
Color Me Bad.
That was my first concert. I will say, though,
Taylor Swift has some catchy songs. I'm not going to lie, right? I mean, I'm willing to celebrate the artistry of somebody, even if I obviously don't, if you're not going to listen to people unless you like their politics or watch their movies, unless you're basically, you're cutting out 95%, unfortunately, of what is out there right now in the marketplace, or has been out there in the marketplace.
What is the most money that you would pay to go see? And there are people paying $20,000 now for Taylor Swift concert. So I have a somewhat unpopular list. I think that live music can be a lot of fun. I think that most big-name concerts are deeply disappointing. I'm just going to say it, because I don't like loud noise. Yeah, so I start with that. I'm curmudgeonly, and I accept that. And some of the audience is going to be like, well, I'm not, but they are. Or, they agree with me. They're curmudgeonly, too. I'm the guy who goes to concerts and actually brings earplugs, because I'm like, I don't want to have my eardrums blasted out. I know, I'm a little weird. It's old,
but I'm trying to think of the most... I like listening to music at my own volume, my own way, my own pace. And so I'm not a live music guy. I don't go to a lot of shows. And a festival, I don't want to roll around in the mud like some kind of barbarian. I'm not into that stuff at all.
I've paid $1,000 for a sporting event ticket before. I don't think I've ever paid more than $500 for a concert ticket, right? Now that's not cheap. But I've never gone above that. So when I see people paying $20,000 for Taylor Swift concert tickets, I'm like, that's wild.
The best live music experiences I've ever had involved sometimes bands where I actually knew the band because they weren't big. They were just friends of mine playing a venue where they're playing music, but it's also like a party going on. It's when you get into a stadium and you're sitting and, Keith Richards is 5 football fields away. You can just sort of hear the crows, flying over your head. You're like, what am I doing here? Why'd I pay $2,000 to sit here so I could see Keith Richards, the back of his head?
I went to the Rolling Stones. I felt like that was a need to see kind of concerts. You don't know how many more years they're going to be doing it. Taylor Swift.
Well, they are of your generation, Clay. So that's important.
Stop.
Newt Gingrich here, and I'd like to invite you to listen to my podcast, Newt's World. Most people know me as the former Speaker of the House, but I'm also a historian with a wide range of interest. I enjoy talking with fascinating people who are doing extraordinary things. I release 3 episodes of Newt's World every week, and I want to invite you to listen. Hopefully, we'll both learn something new. Listen to Newt's World on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.
The Monica Crowley Podcast is a whip-smart, fast-paced, sassy blend of politics, culture, history, and humor, all brought to you with the sunny optimism of Ronald Reagan's happy warrior spirit. Hi, I'm Monica Crowley, and I've served 2 American presidents, Richard Nixon in his last years as Foreign Policy Assistant, and Donald Trump as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. You've seen me on TV, read my New York Times best-selling books and popular columns, and now you can download my podcast, where you will hear one-of-a-kind insights and interviews. So join me on the Monica Crowley Podcast. It's true appointment listening. Join our legion of happy warriors here on the Monica Crowley Podcast. Listen to the Monica Crowley Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.